Welcome back to Jersey Matters, our primetime special on the Republican National Convention. And look who we found. Bob Ingle is a veteran journalist. How many conventions is this for you now?
So many I have forgotten, but you remember Jimmy Carter, right?
Sure, I do.
That long.
Wow. Bob Ingle is also known as the foremost expert on Chris Christie. He wrote a New York Times bestseller, one of two bestsellers, right? The autobiography of Chris Christie. Bob, let's talk about Chris Christie first, then we'll get into some of the convention stuff. Chris Christie is speaking, but he didn't get selected as vice president. Did he expect to be selected?
I think he wanted to be, and I think he had a good chance. Now, the word on the street is that Trump really wanted Christie because there's a good chemistry there and they've known each other for a long time. But Trump's children had a really big influence on this selection. And the word on the street is that they didn't want Christie, they wanted somebody else, namely Mike Pence.
Do we know why the children did not want Chris Christie?
Well, I can give you a good guess. I can't look inside anybody's mind, of course, but when Chris Christie was U.S. Attorney, there was a case in which he sent Charles Kushner to prison. Charles Kushner is the son of Jared Kushner, who happens to be married to Trump's daughter.
Well, that would be a good reason.
That might explain it, yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about Chris Christie. Do you think he was promised something?
I think it was understood from the very beginning that he had skills that could be used in this administration. I think he wanted to be vice president. I think that he will be happy to be chief of staff. He's been mentioned for that. Also attorney general, since he was the U.S. attorney for New Jersey, and as we just said, that may have caused him some problems down the road. But I think if Chris Christie wants to work in a Trump administration, if he's elected, he can have whatever job he wants.
You have John Kasich not showing up. You have John McCain not showing up. You have Mitt Romney not showing up. You have the whole Bush family, so the last two Republican presidents not showing up. And none of the young stars like Susanna Martinez or Nikki Haley are here either. You're not left with much.
Right. Well, their feeling is, I think, and once again, I can't get inside their head, but their feeling is if this doesn't go well, and I think most of them are thinking it's not going to go well, they don't want their political future to be damaged by being tied to Donald Trump.
We're shooting this in the wake of yet another police shooting in Baton Rouge. 3 police officers shot in Baton Rouge. What effect is that going to have on the convention? They have to address it.
Well, you would think they would, and so far you have Donald Trump saying that I am the law and order candidate. Now that's very interesting because I've seen this twice before. Richard Nixon was the law and order candidate, the only president forced out of office because of something called Watergate. Now, before him, there was another candidate that I covered named George Wallace, who was governor of Alabama. He was the law and order candidate, too.
Are you making a connection between Nixon and George Wallace? You must not be a Trump fan to make that kind of connection.
Well, no, I'm just saying I've covered a lot of candidates, and I noticed a lot of similarities. I think what may be the similarities is they may be appealing towards some of the same people. I think that may be fair. Certainly, George Wallace, when I covered Alabama, I got to know him very well, and I found out that his private persona was nothing like his public image. Richard Nixon, I think, could have been one of the best presidents that we ever had, except he had this paranoia thing going for him there, and that screwed him up. But they were both law and order candidates, and now you have Donald Trump as the law and order candidate. And what I think that means is there is some sort of polling or testing or something like that that says that the public will react well to someone who says they're for law and order. But when you think about it, who isn't really, when you get right down to it?
Yeah, although there seems to be this pro-police, Black Lives Matter.
It seems to be, well, if you're not law and order, you must be for, chaos and all of this. And there's a middle ground there. You can support police. And you can say, okay, there's some few people who don't follow procedure and bad apples, but that is such a small minority of the entire police force in this country. You just can't say either, if you criticize the police, you obviously are not supporting police and law and order. You just can't say that. That doesn't make sense. But that's what happened before with Nixon and with George Wallace.
Speaking of chaos and law and order, do you have expectations of chaos and a breakdown law and order here in Cleveland?
Well, there have been 123 permits issued for demonstrations. And there are 2 or 3 places outside the perimeter where these demonstrations can take place. They've brought in about 5,000 outside police officers, some of them police officers in other states, other people have been deputized. They're ready for anything that happens. What makes it unusual in this case is that Ohio is an open carry state. If you have a permit, you can carry your gun out in public. And sometimes emotions run raw and things get out of hand, and it goes where we don't want to see it go, and it goes beyond being a peaceful demonstration. So I think everybody's keeping their fingers crossed that that's not going to happen, but you really can't guarantee it.
I don't want to draw a parallel, but Texas is also an open carry state, and we know what happened there.
Right. In Texas, you had a demonstration that actually was about complaining about the police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Minnesota. And the police, the Dallas Police Force has a police force that's known for its good community relations. They were there protecting the people who were actually protesting the police in some places. And then some guy with a semi-automatic weapon opens fire. And the interesting thing to me about this was because Texas is an open carry state. You had these people with these AR-15s slung across their shoulder, and it looked like something out of a war movie, and they were just there. When the shooting started, these guys were running just like the unarmed people. So the people who say, well, if you had a few well-armed guys, this would never happen, didn't make a difference there. They ran like everybody else, and they're just darn lucky the police didn't mistake them for the shooter and shoot them down. And if they had, nobody would have blamed the police.
All right, Bob, thanks.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure. I should point out that Bob is dressed appropriately for a convention. I'm not. I'm sweating through this. This is the way I should be dressed. Bob Ingle, veteran journalist in New Jersey and New York Times best-selling author. Jersey Matters will continue after this.